Hey you guys, happy Thursday. It's Coach Jessica. First of all, just want to check in with you guys and see how you're doing. Again, remember, the more that you participate in the group, the more that you actually show up and say what your day is going to look like, the more likely it is to look like that. Um, I have had a busy couple of days. My daughter hasn't been feeling good, and we've had some doctor's appointments and things like that. So I've been tied up with that. But I wanted to talk to y'all about something because I haven't talked a lot about just really specific things about nutrition in this month's group. And this has been on my mind for a few days, and it came from um, conversations with clients, getting food pictures from clients. But I want to talk about a couple of nutrition items that might be helpful for you as you make your decisions about the day and about what you're going to eat. I know we don't talk a lot about like counting and things like that. I think it's counterproductive when you're trying to get free. There's a time and place for it. In fact, our call was all about numbers. We didn't get into how macros and calories can hold you hostage. I'm more than happy to talk about that. So we don't talk about that part a lot. And I do believe it's a tool, and there's a place for it. But I do want to talk to you about what our body needs. There are four macronutrients. You usually hear people only talk about three. They will talk about fat, protein, and carbs. Alcohol is actually also a macronutrient. A macronutrient is anything that your body can use for fuel. And the fact is, alcohol is a fuel source. So if you're someone who drinks and, on occasion, just know that your body is going to default to alcohol as your primary fuel source, and it's not going to be burning fat at that time. So that could be a whole separate conversation, but what I really want to talk to you about is protein. I'm getting there. So we have a choice. What do I want my body to be fueled by? Do I want it to be fueled by carbohydrates? Do I want it to be fueled by fat and protein? And the answer to that is, if you choose to live with carbohydrates as your fuel source, you constantly need to eat carbohydrates because your body can't produce those. They have to come from an external source. So, if I say, I want to be fueled by carbs, I'm always going to have to be eating carbs. I'm really going to have to do that every couple of hours because, again, my body can't replenish them. I have to have an external fuel source. They give me quick fuel, but they burn out fast, and I need more. I see carbohydrates as an inferior fuel source, and the reason for that is because of our brain composition. Our brains are mostly fat, and because of that, our brains work best with ketones as fuel versus carbs as fuel. So, as a holistic nutritionist, I can tell you I've worked with people who don't do keto. I know that surprises some people, but some people, for whatever reason, that is not their choice to do. And I've helped people to come up with the best way to eat. Again, I really believe this is the best way, especially when you have issues with food, because one of the things we want to do is we want to not focus on eating all the time. If carbs is your fuel source, you're going to eat all the time. So, connected to carbs, I want to talk about net carbs and total carbs. I'm just going to say it like this. Net carbs is not a real thing. Some of y'all will be disappointed in that. When you're in the grocery store and you see one of these products and it says, hey, this thing only has 2 grams of net carbs, and you're like, sweet, and maybe the one thing you do pay attention to is carbs, and you try to keep below 20 a day. I think that's what most people do, and you're thinking, gosh, I could have 10 of these if I wanted to, right? Wrong. I want you to flip on the back of that package, and I want you to look at total carbs. Basically, the person who came up with this idea of net carbs, it was specifically for the purpose of marketing products to you. And what they were selling you on was the fact that your body doesn't count fiber and it doesn't count sugar alcohols and so you shouldn't either. But that's not really true. Our body recognizes all carbohydrates that we consume. So I know a lot of people come to me and they're like, I've been doing keto and I haven't lost weight. And I say, what are you doing with carbs? And they'll say, oh, I'm doing 20 net carbs. And we start to look at how many total carbs they're actually eating, and they might be up around 60 or 70 total carbs a day. And the first thing I have people do if they're struggling and they're not losing is to look at total carbs. So if you're someone who is looking at carbs, and I know we're all in different places on this journey. Some of you are just or your goal is just to eat clean, and that's enough. It really is enough. But some of you guys are looking at your carbs, and if you are eating to your net carbs, you're not looking at total carbs, that's one thing you could switch immediately and get a huge difference and have a breakthrough in your results. Our body does recognize all carbs, and it really is just a marketing kind of scam. I hate to say it. Even the person who created it came out with an article about 5 years ago and said, I'm really sorry I did this, because it turned into something that he didn't intend. But always count total carbs if you actually want to have really good results and feel your best. The other two fuel sources, if you choose to be fueled by fat, the awesome thing about that is we all have body fat. Unless you are an elite athlete and your body percent is below 10%, you've got fat on your body. So even if you're not eating something, your body is eating. You're not actually starving. Your body, when you're not consuming food and you're fat fueled, as that's your primary fuel source, your body will actually eat the fat that's stored on your body, which we actually really love. It's one of the things that we love about keto, but it's also one of the reasons why we are able to keep our energy at a consistent level without these crashes, because you don't have to eat something in order for your body to have that fuel source. So finally, you've got protein. Do we want protein to be a fuel source? Well, the answer to that is no, not really. Because remember, our muscles, our heart, that's all made out of protein. But here's the thing. You hear a lot of people say, oh, I heard you're doing keto and it's really bad because it makes your body's going to eat its muscle, which is the craziest thing I've ever heard. That's not true. It's one of the crazier nutrition things I've ever heard. Our body wants to preserve our organs and our muscles at all costs. Like, it is self-protective. The only way that your body will use protein that is part of your body as a fuel source is if there is no fat left. So if it has eaten up all your body fat and the only fuel source it has left is your muscle, it will use the protein from your muscle. But as long as there's fat on your body, it's going to use that instead. So you don't have to worry about that your muscle's going to break down. Again, it's one of those crazy things that people say. So let's talk about what you should eat then. So why is it so important, and why are we always talking about protein? If my body is not going to eat my muscle because I've got fat on it, why is it important for me to consume protein? Well, the importance of protein is that it is the building block for our muscles, and also it's protein that's broken down into amino acids that builds the muscles, and it also produces a small amount of glucose. That glucose is stored in your muscles as glycogen, but it also fuels that part of your brain. Remember, I said your brain is mostly fat, and it's fueled by ketones best, but there's a small part of your brain that requires glucose. And a lot of people get confused about that too. They'll say you have to have carbs or you'll die, which is absolutely not true. But what they're thinking is there's part of your brain that absolutely does require glucose. Well, where that comes from is protein is broken down into glucose for your brain, into glycogen for your muscles, and it is broken down into amino acids. So you've got those two things that protein does for you. You can't produce protein in your body. You actually have to consume protein. So it's important that we get enough of that so that we maintain our muscle mass, so that it produces that through gluconeogenesis. It produces that we need for our brain. So digging into protein, and this is really, after all that, what I'm trying to get to. I learned something really cool. I think it was January 2018. I went to, I'm trying to remember what they called the conference, but basically it was one of the first carnivore conferences I had heard of. Very beginning of 2018. It was in Colorado, and it was very small. There weren't a lot of people here. You didn't hear about people being carnivore, but I was very curious about it. But one of the big things that stood out to me was this. I had always looked at I would pick up a product, let's say a protein shake, and it said 14 grams of protein. I'm like, okay, 14 grams of protein. If my body needs 100, that's 14 of it. I would pick up a pack of meat. It would say 14 grams of protein. And I thought these things are basically equal. But one of the biggest things I learned at that time was that 14 grams of protein does not equal 14 grams of protein. Why? Because you can only really count what your body can use. And all protein is not usable. Proteins from plant sources, we only use about 40 to 60% of that. So let's say you had 20 grams of protein from, say, pea protein, right? If I can only use about half of that, I'm only really getting 10 grams of protein, not 20, right? If I'm eating a piece of meat that has 20 grams of protein, I'm getting 20 grams of protein. So I'm bringing this up because what I'm seeing is there's a lot of people that are doing a lot of shakes. There's a lot of people that are eating things that are inferior types of protein. And so I just wanted to bring that up because if you're not feeling your best, you may not be getting adequate protein in your life. And you might think that you are because if you at a glance, it looks like you're getting enough protein, but the reality is you actually need to have more usable protein in your life. And so things like pea protein, whey protein, those things, protein that you get from beans, those things, they aren't going to fuel you the same way, and you need a lot more of them to equal the same amount as protein from meat. So what do I suggest? Like, am I anti-shake? No, I'm not. If you want to make some kind of shake, that's fine, but you want to get one that has something like egg white protein, because the egg white protein is a complete protein and your body can use all of that. Now this one might, and of course if any kind of meat that you want to eat is a complete protein and your body can use all those grams of protein. Here's one that might hurt your heart. Let's talk about pork rinds. So I know people that are trying to make sure they get adequate protein, and they're like, you know what, I ate this whole bag of protein, this whole bag of pork rinds, and this had this much protein. Well, guess what? The protein in pork rinds is an incomplete protein. Remember what I told you about how when you eat protein, it breaks down into both glucose and amino acids. And the amino acids are the really important part because they are the ones that actually fuel your muscles. Like the amino acids is what we're trying to get out of protein. That's that building block. Well, pork rinds don't have that at all. When a pork rind is broken down, it does not have the amino acid profile to actually do anything positive for you. Sorry, I know y'all hate that. I actually really like pork rinds. I might like them a little bit too much. I have to limit them in my life, but I really don't. You can't count them when you're looking at nourishment. You know, that is a word that I use a lot. Nourishing is what makes you feel better. It's what helps your muscles grow. Nourishment is the name of the game. And so if you're eating things like pork rind, if you're using like stuff that has pea protein, even whey protein, you're just not going to get the same bang for your buck as you do with meat and with eggs. So I just want to encourage you today, take a little bit of a closer look. If you're not feeling good, you may be not getting adequate protein even though you thought you were. Also take a look at those total carbs on some of those things. If you're picking up, there's very few products that I recommend. Any of you guys that have known me for a while, you know, there's very few things that I'm like, yes, use this product. There are a few exceptions. One of them is like egg life wraps. they're fine. They're egg whites and they're actually good protein. But most products, they've got, and the reason for it is other ingredients in them, or they're poor quality protein or something like that. So take a look and see, look at total carbs. You may be shocked. If it sits net, you just need to ignore that. And just know that is an attempt to get you to buy. And you want to look at total carbs, and you want to look at where am I getting the protein from? If something says it has 14 grams of protein, if you're drinking some shake and it says 14 grams, what kind of protein is it? And I would love for you guys to look at what you've been eating, and feel free to ask me these questions. You can respond to this video and ask right here. You can do a separate post, but I would love to answer that question. If you have a product that you've been eating and you want to share that here in the group and ask questions about it, again, that's something I want to answer for you. As much as we don't spend a lot of time talking about nutrition, we spend much more time talking about behaviors, because that is the part that requires the most work. You don't want to shoot yourself in the foot and not be feeling well, because if we don't feel good, it's easier to give into behaviors that we are trying to war against. So anyway, I hope this is helpful. I hope it's informative, and as always, I'm open to all of your questions about anything regarding nutrition or anything else that we've discussed so far. Hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.